as this group is meeting over here, this fictional group is meeting over here, they will come and tell me if they didn't read. And that occasionally happens. A child has forgotten their book at school and they didn't do the reading. They're not going to try and bluff because they will be caught by the others. So they'll tell me that they didn't read, and I'm going to make a note of that on the marking form that you're about to see. So don't worry, you haven't seen it yet, you're about to see it. Otherwise, that group just meets on their own, and once they've been meeting for a little while, I'm going to come in with my marking sheet. And so I want to show you the marking sheet now. You're going to skip ahead just so that you can see it, and then we'll go back to the bullets. It looks like this. And it says it's a table. If they have done everything that they were supposed to have done, they've read it, and they've proved to either the group or me that they've understood it. That's the hard part. They get 3. If they manage to write the questions, 2 skinny questions, 2 fat, juicy questions, and a connection, they get another mark that brings them up to 4. To get 5, which is equivalent to an A, they've also had to stop themselves while they're reading and look up 3 words in a dictionary. Your instructions that you give them are clearly written out, that if there's no words that they claim that there's no unfamiliar words, they have to look up 3 random words in the dictionary. And that's how you stop kids from saying, oh, well, I knew all the words, so I didn't have to do that work. No, 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 no. This is a fail-proof system that you absolutely know whether they've done the work assigned or not done it. So their names are up at the top. Well, how do you know if they've understood it? This is how I come to a group. I will say, okay, have you guys been asking each other skinny questions? You're about finished your skinny questions? You've gone around? Okay. So was there anybody that you're thinking maybe was reading too fast or too late at night? They couldn't quite remember how to answer anybody's skinny questions? Remember, you're not doing anybody a favor by saying, oh, they understood it. If they've got using a good strategy and you're covering for them, they're not going to be learning. So is there anybody that I should be asking some questions? And I know Nathan's name, so I'm going to pick on Nathan. So some people will say, well, Nathan couldn't answer any of our questions. So I'll say, so Nathan, was it just their questions? Should I ask you some of my own questions? Or were you maybe just reading too late at night? If he was bluffing, he really didn't do the reading, he's going to say, oh, I think I just was reading too late at night. He gets no marks for being ready for this lit circle. He's forfeited that. He knows it. He can see it. It's right in front of him. But he doesn't have to go through the humiliation of being asked for questions he didn't answer. If it's simply that he knows lots about this book, he really did read, he's going to ask me for my own questions. Depending on my familiarity with the novel, or in your case, your familiarity with the novel, or the time frame, you might just ask him questions right there, or you might say, just at recess time, can you come on over to the computer and I'll ask you questions then? So they're reading a book that you haven't read, you have them sit here, you ask the questions from the computer. And so for a lot of the Lit Circle books, the questions are written in sections. So you read about chapter 4 and 5 for homework. Well, look up the questions for chapters 4 and 5, and then you'll know whether he's got the questions, okay? So that's the comprehension part. Then I'm just going, yes?
Sorry, could I just clarify?
Yeah.
That this is on your clipboard, the marking?
Yes.
And not, do the students have a copy of it?
I'm just doing it right in front of them.
Right.
And there are times that I might be busy, or if I'm going to be away, I don't give this to the TOC, I give it to the kids. And the kids do their own marking because they know exactly. There's no surprise about whether they're ready or not. They know whether they're ready or not. So I teach them early on how they could do their marking. So I come into the group to say, do I need to check in anybody? And most of the time, there's nobody I need to check. They've all been answering. And I just walk around the room and I just pick up their duotangs. Oh, I see they've done it. Check, check, check. I just walk up and pick, and I can go around any group of up to 8 members and in 1 minute look to see whether they've got the skinny fat connection and 3 words to go check, 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 or X, they're missing something. That is my marking. And it took me 1 minute of joining. So perhaps 1 minute to talk to them about the skinny questions, 1 minute to actually mark it, 2 minutes. They're meeting for maybe 20 minutes. 15 to 25 is great. In a pinch, you can do it faster. If you give them more time, of course, they'd love it. But I would encourage you to do 15 or 20-minute meetings. In that 20 minutes, they can get everything accomplished. You spent 2 minutes there. And the rest of the time, you were going around helping the people who needed help with the math or the French or whatever it is that they were working on. So you've saved that valuable commodity, which is called time. Exactly. But there is one other reason that I might join in. So I may join in. Actually, there's a few reasons, but one reason I might come in, if this group has just, I'll go on the other side of the room now, just to challenge this machine. If this group has just been reading the chapter in Breadwinner where the girls go into thinking they're going to watch a sports game, instead of that they see thieves getting their hands chopped off, if I know that's the section that they've just read, I'm going to come in and join their group for a while and discuss and debrief that kind of thing. Or if one of their members is a frequently unready member and they're meeting, I'm going to be there either to encourage them and cheer them on for being ready or to catch them. So depending on the makeup of their group, I have the ability, if I don't have too many groups meeting at the same time, I have the ability to join the group for as long as I might want. I also, you'll notice that there's a spot in the bottom that says oral language. And I'm not marking this most of the time. But at least twice in every term, I'm going to get to a lit circle that every kid is in and mark their oral language. And there is an oral language sheet later on in your package that you can use, and I always teach kids what that would look like. We talk about it as a class, what's good participation, what's good listening, building on somebody else's answers. I always give them the sheet a week ahead and have them practice coaching each other, knowing that next week I'm going to be sitting with that group and marking them. So this is the time to help the reluctant speakers practice how to give their answers and how to do good argument. So most of the time that's blank. So the preparation is from being ready. And so on the Peter website is this as a page of 3 tables, because most groups meet 3 times. So I just have a page devoted to Inkheart, and I pull that out and I mark it, and so I can say, oh, I see, Alexa, you didn't have your connection last time, and this is the second time in a row you didn't have your connection. Next week I want to see that. So it's all laid out for me. The reason yours looks different in your handout is just so that if you decided you wanted variety, which I seldom do, but here's some ideas for you to give a different assignment that you could put in the middle section. I normally, because time is of such an essence, once I've taught kids how to do lit circles once, then I don't have to keep reteaching it. If I keep using the same questions, the same things, they all know how to do it. It's done. They can use it all year, all the time. Okay, questions, yes?
Question about so the marking sheet, the 2 skinny questions, they're able to answer 2 skinny questions, or they have 2?
They have 2 skinny questions written down to ask.
Okay.
Oral language is involving both the speaking and the listening. The asking and the answering. So in order to get a full mark for oral language, they have to have come prepared to ask questions, and they have to be able to think and give some answers back. Yes?
So when you're giving them a check mark for the 2 skinny questions, fact questions, connections, and words, you are doing this by observing the group, or is there something being...
I'm just picking up, you've got a duotang where you've got it written down. I'm just looking to see, oh, yep, I see you've got 2 skinny, and you've taught the kids how to label skinny, skinny, fat, fat, connection, words. And you can look at somebody's in 10 seconds to see if they've got it. If I know this young lady has a tendency to try and bluff, I remember once in the year she wrote down the word tomato as a word she looked up in the dictionary, I'm going to actually pay attention for a little while after that to the definitions she writes down. But mostly because, do the kids care more what their peers think of them or what you think of them? Their peers. So they're actually coming well prepared because of the peer pressure. You're having to let go to think learning is dependent on you. It's actually dependent on them as a group. So they'll say to each other, well, that wasn't a very juicy question. And so they are usually, so I just need to have evidence I've seen it, even if I haven't read it.
Okay, so you step into the group and you quickly do a little circle around.
Yep. I'm not even stepping in. You teach them that they don't stop when they see you coming. They just keep the group going, and I'm walking around the outside. I pick up their duotang, check, 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 goes back, check, 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 goes back.
Okay.
Takes 1 minute. Yes?
Well, I did have a question. If you've got John in your first column, and he's done comprehension, skimming, fast, connection, and figures. He's done all 5. Then do you move the 5 down into the preparation?
I do. I do.
And the oral is, as you were saying, only if you're sitting in on it.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, these are 2 and final.
So this is where, if there's something burning, where there's something you didn't understand about the literature circle formula, this would be your chance to ask it. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about read alouds and independent reading and how you can use this for your gray area, your low kids. Yes?
2 quick questions. One is, just to clarify, they do not tend to read the lit circle books at school in silent reading time as such. It's maybe when they're just finished their work. But, I mean, you allow them at school.
So I don't, because I can get away with that for where I teach. But I often give this workshop in other places in the interior and up north where there is in different places, and that sounds like it's a northern or an interior issue. It could be anywhere where you could be in a school where there is not the home support or the culture of a homework expectation around reading, where reading homework is just not going to work for your class. And in that case, what I recommend is that it becomes your silent reading program. Then you do it. If you can't read, there's nothing magical. There's no reason it has to be read at home. I just am able to pull that off. And I keep the numbers so small because lots of children have very highly programmed lives, pejorative, highly programmed lives, and lots of kids are living in shared custody situations or without family support, so that it might be onerous for them to read for more than 2 hours. But they have a week, so they can schedule it so that they are reading all on the weekends or all on weekdays, or not doing any reading on Wednesday night when they have soccer practice and piano. So that's the formula. It's always worked for me teaching in Burnaby to expect most kids to do this. I had a question from somebody who's teaching French immersion, and so one idea that I had, my own children grew up in French immersion, and I am not able to support them very well in French. And so one idea could be that having their children read at home an English book, which keeps their English fluency and their thinking skills, their reading skills and thinking skills in English, but give them 20 minutes of English speaking time to have their meeting once a week. It seems to me that that would solve some of the problem of not having a lot of French immersion literature circle books to take home. Yes?
The other question is, how much time do you give your literature circle students to meet to discuss their book?
Yep, 15 to 25 minutes.
That was part of it.
Yep.
There we go, okay.
There we go, no problem.
Sorry, it was 1 meeting a week.
One meeting a week.
You might have one group meeting on Monday, one on Tuesday, one on...
Yep. That is the easiest way to do it. Yes?
Sorry, it was probably
No,
in
good.
notes, but because I haven't had a chance to read it, I'm just wondering, that first week, because students won't have had the weekend to read their book, if that's the only time they get
Yes.
that chance to read. What do you do for that first week?
So I'm going to suggest that the easiest thing, if you're at all feeling timid about this, the easiest thing is just to give them on a Friday and to have no groups meeting the first week and have everybody have 60 pages or some number for the following week. I actually do the math a little differently, so if you're feeling comfortable with this, I'll give the books on Friday, and I'll have the Monday group only having to read 20 pages, and the Tuesday group meeting 30 pages, and the Wednesday group, and I finish off in that same kind of a staggered way. So you'll look at the books and figure out what kind of formula makes sense. And you'll choose your books according to what you've got multiple copies of and whether or not you've got good resources. So I read more than I have time to get put on the PETA website all the time. So if you happen to have multiple copies of a book and you don't see any resources on the PETA website, email me and I'll look to see if I have them written already and just not posted yet. Otherwise, I'll tell you you're on your own, and if you use it, please send me something at the end. ERAC is Educational Resource Acquisition Consortium, and they're a group of people who hire practicing teachers like you and me to work in teacher teams and read through books and make sure that the books have no things that are going to get you into trouble. So if you go onto the ERAC website, it's a good source of what fits well with the curriculum and what is going to not get you into any trouble, be politically incorrect, racist, sexist, that kind of thing. So I think my reading list works fine, but I think the ERAC list will have a lot more books on them, but I just probably can't support them with resources. Yes?
Is it ERAC or
ERAC. ERAC. Educational Resource Acquisition Consortium. I have for many years been one of the people that they contract with to read some of those books, and I can tell you how thoroughly those are read and checked by people. So they're even more thoroughly checked than me. I've just read them and thought my own processes. Okay. So now the literature circles are springboards for individual or group inquiries. So I've talked to you a little bit about independent reading. And that means that when my kids, they've read Camp X in the first term, first literature circle, and they're disappointed because I haven't offered Camp 30, the sequel, as my next literature circle. So most of them beg to get the copies off of my shelf, borrow them from me, because I actually have another set. Or they will go to the library and get them, and then they sign up on my whiteboard, RC, they're waiting for a conference. So Todd will write, Camp 30, Todd, Camp 30. So I know when I have a few minutes, when it's an independent work time, I will call on Todd, and I will have a meeting with him. And you, in your case, you're going to have the meeting right in front of the computer, and you say, oh, Camp 30, let me just pull up letter C on this website. Oh, now I remember my questions. And I'm checking, and so I'm giving him credit for the home reading. So a lot of my kids, the majority of my kids' reading letter grade is based on the quality and the quantity of their reading. So you can factor in anything you like for reading. That's just my practice a lot. So they want to read a lot of books. They don't have to have read 20 in term 1 to get an A. They probably have had to read 5. And there's probably only time for them to have read 3 lit circles, so they're going to have been inspired to read 2 of something else. That's kind of the rough numbers that kind of work for me. Okay, then once I know Todd, somebody else has read Camp 30, I don't have to do the reading conference. I say, Todd, could you please do and torture Ray about Camp 30? He will love to do that. He's going to ask questions of Ray because he just recently read the book. Now he's going to check Ray's understanding. Kids love to be the torturee and the torturer. Todd and Ray come to me and said, yep, Ray read the book. So he gets check mark for having read the book as well. So I'm not having to do all the reading conferences myself. I'm only doing the conferences for a book that no one else in the class has read. So read aloud. Not all great novels are wonderful when read aloud. Every page has to hold the listener's interest with action, suspense, or humor. So I have a small section on the PETA website of read alouds that I have used successfully, and I suggest you, if you don't know of ones of your own, that you start with one of those. And if you have other ones that suggest that do work well, please let me know so I can add them to the list. I use this formula. I choose to alternate, so I will have one book as a read aloud where I have the only copy, and I have the kids practice different note-taking strategies while I am reading, and then they write some kind of a test at the end. The next read aloud I do is one where I can get from my district resource center or my own supply, one for everybody. and everybody has a Post-it note or a card, something. I usually give them a playing card which they use as a bookmark for their copy, and if they have their playing card face up on their desk, that means they're volunteering to read aloud. So we maybe are reading Homework Machine, and I start reading chapter 5 of Homework Machine, and I see my friend over here has got her card up, so I tap her on her shoulder, and she starts reading until I take it back. I can either tap her on the shoulder, I usually just use my powerful teacher voice to take it back, by then reading the next sentence as I go and tap my other friend over here. And so over the course of a year using that system, more and more children become comfortable volunteering to read aloud. That just means the read alouds, one of the things that they're great about and why they're great about teaching reading strategies, whether using Faye Brownlee's or Adrienne Gear's or anything else, one of the ways that they're great is that you're leveling the playing field because you're doing the part that not everybody can do. You're doing the reading. You're also modeling great reading for them, hopefully great reading. But the kids who can't read that on their own are able to follow along. But I alternate because I also want to teach notes-taking strategies, so I switch back and forth. Okay, I am 2 minutes over time, but I would like to tell you 2 things and take you 3 minutes. Can you live with that? Okay, you can have kids through your, this happened to use Inspiration, a software program, but I've done it before where they've done posters. Get the kids through a term. I don't do it for term 1, but I do it for term 2 and 3. They choose a topic. And I've listed some topics on here. For instance, this one is, Anna chose, if you have courage, you can overcome obstacles. And she found examples from several different books of this, and it's the critical thinking piece. So if you are wanting to, if you're reading through that and you're wanting to get an example of this, you can pull up an example and have a look at it. I'll keep these samples, but if you email me that you want me to scan you some and send them to you, I will be happy to do that so you've got some samples for your own classroom so that they can see what this looks like. Once again, we're in a new curriculum where we're talking about differentiated learning. We're talking about choice. If you give your kids choices of books, and you give your kids choices of themes to look for, they can rise to the occasion. And the last, as I told you, the little asterisks that I listed on there of where I said that these kids were rating way below grade level. What it was that I did, it was The Brilliance of Judy Blume and Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing. And for years that I said, I know every year literature circles will be absolutely successful to get my kids reading far more than I ever dreamed, except for 1 or 2 children, and I will fail with them. And I knew what was happening. They get excited like everybody else. Every 3 weeks is like Christmas. They all want to read all these books. They go home excited. But they didn't have the memories and the home support and the organization, the executive functioning to be able to continue enough reading over the week and come back for a weekly report. I knew that what they needed was a daily time with me. And I thought, I can't do that. But I went with enough years saying I can't do that and said, okay, maybe I can. So I put together deliberately this cluster of kids who are reading below grade level for a variety of reasons. And said, okay, I tried my usual thing in the first term. It didn't work, just like always. So in January, I gave them all Tale of a Fourth Grade Nothing, and these kids all, because of the nature of why they were behind, weren't studying French. Everybody else working on a French assignment, and I sat with these kids in a circle, and I read the first chapter of Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing, and we talked about it. No homework. The next day, we read the Tale of a Fourth Grade Nothing, Chapter 2. These kids were in grade 5, and this is a grade 4 book. But I didn't read the last page, and I gave them the last page to do for homework. You can already see where this is going, can't you? Day 3, again I read, and most chapters of a book take about 15 minutes if you're reading a grade level book. So I was asked at the break about how long to read aloud. I found I can read aloud a chapter mostly in about 15 minutes, which is about the time that I have to give it. So I read chapter 3 of Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing, and we talked about it and laughed about it, but now they had 2 pages of homework. I did this, maintained this for about 8 school days. And I thought, I can't just turn my back on the rest of the class for 15 minutes a day for all the time. But I started having them having more and more of the reading at home. And then I still just made a little bit of time to meet with them every day, sometimes for 2 minutes. If I ran out of time and there just wasn't time, they pulled each other in from recess and lunch to do it because it was important to them. They saw themselves as a community. I've had one person at one workshop say, just a minute, that upsets me. These are kids who are low-level reading and you're treating them like a group. No, sorry, they developed a sense of community. And they saw each other as a community, and they loved talking about this. And so by the time before we got to the end of that first book, they were doing almost all their reading at home. The daily connection with me and with each other, what was important. And the reason I love that book is it's the first of about 8 books in the series. I own 10 copies of all 8 of them, and you're welcome to borrow them. And what it does is if you get a kids on a series, they know the author's style, they know the characters. They're doing less and less decoding work to make them successful. They are becoming better readers and they can feel it. And it inspires them and they're reading more quickly and it kept them going. So then they were managed by the 3rd term. By towards the end of the 3rd term, most of them were integrating with the other Lit Circle groups as well. They had developed enough reading skill and enough reading motivation to be successful. I hope I've answered most of your questions. I know it's hot and most of you have places to go. I don't particularly. So anybody, I'm welcoming you to stay and visit and ask questions if you like. And have a great new career. Don't forget to let me know if you want to volunteer for check-in at the PETA conference and get free registration, and you could do that anytime starting now. Thank you all.
Thanks for watching. I really hope that the ideas and resources here have been useful for you and will be helpful to your students.